The story of World War II is often told through battles, generals, and strategy, but behind every victory was something far less glamorous and far more crucial: logistics. In the early stages of the war, German commanders mocked American logistics, believing the United States was too slow, too inexperienced, and too disorganized to sustain large-scale military operations in Europe. They assumed that even if American troops landed in France, they would never be able to supply themselves fast enough to pose a real threat. But that belief would collapse the moment the Red Ball Express roared onto the scene, creating one of the most extraordinary supply networks in military history and proving that logistics could win a war just as powerfully as any tank or rifle. In the summer of 1944, after the success of D-Day, Allied armies pushed rapidly across France. Momentum was on their side. German forces were retreating, cities were being liberated, and optimism surged. Yet, there was a major problem developing behind the front lines. The further the Allied troops advanced, the farther they moved from the ports where food, fuel, ammunition, and equipment arrived. The tanks and trucks that powered the advance were hungry machines, consuming staggering amounts of fuel every single day. The faster the Allies moved, the more they outran their own supply lines. Leaders like Eisenhower and Patton knew that without fuel, the advance would grind to a halt, giving Germany the chance to regroup and counterattack. The fate of the campaign depended not just on bravery, but on the ability to keep supplies flowing. The railway system in France had been heavily bombed by the Allies to hinder German movement, which meant it couldn't immediately be used to resupply the front. Fuel pipelines hadn't been extended far enough yet, and storage depots near the battlefield didn't exist. Roads were the only option, and they were narrow, damaged, and crowded. Normal military transport systems were too slow to meet the demand. Something radical was needed, something fast, relentless, and nonstop. In response, the U.S. Army created a daring solution: a high-speed, round-the-clock trucking route dedicated solely to rushing supplies to the front lines. They called it the Red Ball Express. This was not just a convoy system, it was a lifeline. The Red Ball Express began in August 1944 and operated every hour of every day. Thousands of trucks, primarily GMC 2.5-ton vehicles, thundered across a designated route that looped from the French coast toward the advancing forces. The name, Red Ball, came from railroad terminology used for priority freight shipments, symbolizing goods that had to move with urgent speed. Bright red circles marked the vehicles and road signs, signaling that these trucks had absolute priority. Civilian vehicles were banned from the route. Military units had to stay out of the way. Nothing could obstruct the flow. The mission was simple: deliver fuel, ammunition, food, and spare parts fast enough to keep the war machine moving. Operating this system was a monumental challenge. The route stretched hundreds of miles, often through rough terrain, muddy roads, and battered villages. Drivers had limited visibility, little sleep, and no room for mistakes. The trucks formed a continuous line, sometimes spaced only a few dozen meters apart. The pressure was immense. Each vehicle carried supplies that could determine whether a tank battalion advanced or stalled, whether a division fought or retreated. Speed was essential, but so was endurance. Many drivers spent up to 20 hours behind the wheel, fighting fatigue, rain, darkness, and enemy threats. German aircraft occasionally strafed convoys, and snipers lurked in the countryside. Breakdowns were constant, and roadside repairs became a routine part of survival. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Red Ball Express was the people who ran it.